The Republicans claimed that the Bureau had relentlessly pursued former President Trump and his allies while neglecting leads about the Bidens. The Republicans, however, were in no rush to publicize what Boomer had to say, perhaps because his account ran against their preferred storyline. His fellow agents jumped on any new scrap of information about Hunter's foreign business dealings, even though the resulting investigation never produced evidence of illegal corruption. The agency leaders had moved repeatedly to squash investigations of possible Russian and Ukrainian ties to Rudy Giuliani. Let's get the GOP's reaction. What are all these sniveling little cowards saying about their criminal head of their party? PB girl!
This should be decided at the ballot box, not in a bunch of liberal jurisdictions trying to put the man in jail. They're weapon.
Oh, well, I'm sure Lindsey Graham is going to say that, because it's a good possibility that there were. So the indictment last night, we had 14 people named in the indictment, 30 people that are still sealed. It's a good possibility that Senator Lindsey Graham's name is one of those 30 that did not get unsealed last night, because he was interfering in the Georgia election. So, of course, he wants to rush to go on Fox News and say it's all political. We didn't do anything wrong.
The law in this country, they're trying to take Donald Trump down.
Their target is political. This is not the rule of law. This is not enforcing the law fairly.
Everyday Americans are concerned that they're going to be next.
Iowans are becoming desensitized to this. Iowans see there are two systems of justice.
It just feels more and more like we're in a type of country like the Soviet Union or other countries that criminalize political speech, that imprison political opponents.
The legal system being weaponized against political opponents, that is un-American and unacceptable.
I think it's an example of this criminalization of politics. I don't think that this is...
No. I think the Republican Party nominating a criminal would have been the criminalization of politics. But don't get me started on the Republican Party and their being adjacent to criminality going all the way back. Going back to the Nixon days. Fuzzy Simba, good evening. Warlord, good evening. Warlord, of course, saying fuck DeSantis because Warlord loves Trump.
For the country.
They're serious and they address fundamental issues of our democracy. And so he ought to be held accountable.
We can't normalize this conduct. I mean, this has never happened before in this country, ever, where you had a candidate for president of the United States conduct himself in this way, to disrespect the election process in this way, to refuse to accept the verdict of the voters.
I agree with Chris Christie. God damn, that's a first. Unless I've done it before on the show because he bashed Trump some other time. That's possible. But I don't think it is. I think I would have remembered. Perhaps Trump is already banned from being president again. Two conservative lawmakers make a strong 14th Amendment argument, but the politics of their theory are very, very dicey. Apparently the Federalist Society is in on this. Yes, two conservative legal scholars, members of the Federalist Society, in good standing, have just published an audacious argument that Donald Trump is constitutionally prohibited from running for president. I would think so, and that state election officials have not only the authority but the legal obligation to prevent his name from appearing on the ballot. The legal paper, authored by University of Chicago professor William Baud and University of St. Thomas professor Michael Stokes Paulson, centers on Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, a provision that limits people from returning to public office if they have since engaged in insurrection or rebellion, or given aid or comfort to those who have. Baud and Paulson argue that this clearly covers Trump's behavior between November 2020 and January 2021. I agree. The most politically explosive application of Section 3 to the events of January 6 is at the same time the most straightforward. former President Donald J. Trump is constitutionally disqualified from again being president or holding any other covered office because of his role in the attempted overthrow of the 2020 election and the events leading to the January 6th attack. He's literally being charged for it. Consequences of this argument are astonishing. On Bod and Paulson's read, Section 3 is self-executing, meaning it does not require an act of Congress to enter force and binds the public officials in the position to act on its dictates. Basically, if a single official anywhere in the U.S. electoral system finds their constitutional analysis compelling, Bod and Paulson urge them to act on it. Basically saying Secretary of States should bar Trump from appearing on the ballot. No official should shrink from these duties. It would be wrong, indeed, arguably itself a breach of one's constitutional oath of office, to abandon one's responsibility of faithful interpretation, application, and enforcement of Section 3. As a matter of law, I find their arguments quite compelling. If you look at Section 3 in light of the historical evidence and how restrictions on eligibility for office work elsewhere in the Constitution, it's hard to disagree with Bod and Paulson's application of its text to Trump. But as a matter of politics, encouraging state election officials to go rogue and kick Trump off the ballot is a recipe for disaster. And that disconnect between what the law says and the practical barriers to implementing it speaks to some deep problems in American democracy that led to Trump's insurrection in the first place. If you find that compelling and you'd like to read the rest of the article, boom, there it is in the comments in the chat. I mean, he's being charged with rebellion, a conspiracy to defraud the United States and overturn the 2020 election. Seems pretty cut and dry that he would be barred from office. But it is within the realm of possibility that the FBI and the DOJ are actually biased against it. Perhaps there is a deep state, and the FBI is actually biased against Trump. Shall we examine that claim? Reading from the New Yorker, is the FBI truly biased against Trump? An agent turned whistleblower claims that the Bureau was eager to investigate Hunter Biden, but protected Rudy Giuliani. Special Agent Jonathan Bumma of the Los Angeles office of the Federal Bureau of Investigation holds a unique perspective on the origin of two interconnected political scandals. A former biochemist who was trained in Russia by the agency, Bumma has spent 15 years cultivating human resources in investigations of money laundering, public corruption, and foreign attempts to influence elections. In January of 2019, information from one of Bumma's sources set in motion the Bureau's first inquiries into potential undisclosed lobbying and tax evasion by Hunter Biden, President Joe Biden's son, and at the time, a director of the Ukrainian company Burisma. Bumma also played a pivotal role in a Bureau investigation into possibly illegal foreign lobbying activity and campaign finance violations by Rudy Giuliani, former President Donald Trump's personal lawyer, who oversaw a sprawling effort to dig up dirt on Hunter Biden's Ukrainian ties.
Do you think we're stupid? You think we're fools?
Earlier this year, Bumma watched with keen interest as the Republican-led House Judiciary Committee geared up for the public. I feel like I'm saying his name different every time. I'm sorry. It's spelled like Burma without the R in it. Bumma? Bumma. Bumma watched with keen interest as the Republican-led House Judiciary Committee geared up for the public hearings into the Biden administration's alleged political weaponizing of the FBI. The Republicans claimed that the Bureau had relentlessly pursued former President Trump and his allies while neglecting leads about the Bidens. Go ahead, Joe. Come here.
Come on, man.
Representative Jim Jordan, the Ohio Republican who chairs the committee, complained on Meet the Press that although agents had raided Trump's home, they hadn't raided Biden's home. In April, Booma reached out to Jordan's office offering public testimony as a whistleblower. He later gave a detailed phone interview to two former federal agents whom the committee had hired to investigate what its conservative members called the Biden family business. The Republicans, however, were in no rush to publicize what Booma had to say, perhaps because his account ran against their preferred storyline. Booma said that during the Trump administration, Bureau officials hardly covered up for the Bidens. His fellow agents jumped on any new scrap of information about Hunter's foreign business dealings, even though the resulting investigation never produced evidence of illegal corruption. Instead, in Booma's telling, the agency leaders had moved repeatedly to squash investigations of possible Russian and Ukrainian ties to Rudy Giuliani. Not only did the Trump administration Attorney General William Barr appear to shut down an active investigation of Giuliani in 2020, Booma has charged that even under the Biden administration, agency overseers seemed determined to silence some of the most important sources feeding his Giuliani reporting. 3 months after he approached the House Republicans, Booma laid out his account of events in a 22-page statement, and on July 15th, he presented it to the Democratic-led Senate Judiciary Committee. By mid-2020, he wrote, his reporting about Giuliani had produced acute anxiety within the New York and Los Angeles field offices, coupled with an urgent desire to shut off my sources and me. As their efforts to suppress this investigative work escalated, my direct management specifically told me in writing that I was no longer allowed to do any reporting related to public corruption, criminal matters, anyone in the White House, and any former or current associates of President Trump. It is well known that Giuliani tried to solicit damaging information from Ukraine about the Bidens. By the summer of 2020, when Barr, in effect, scuttled Booma's Giuliani investigation, two men who were linked to Giuliani's effort, Lev Parnas and Igor Fruman, had been arrested for violating campaign finance laws. Lev Parnas now says that he knows of a meeting where they talked about planting evidence on a Hunter Biden laptop. So they had been arrested for campaign finance laws, including funneling illegal contributions into a Trump political action committee, while simultaneously working to advance the interests of a Ukrainian official. Parnas and Fruman, who were also in league with a Kremlin-linked Ukrainian prosecutor, both went to prison. There has never been a Democrat head of the FBI. They've all been Republicans. Chris Wray, the current head of the FBI, is a Republican. Comey, the dude that Trump fired, he was a Republican. The idea that this law enforcement agency that has traditionally been hardcore Republican and very against leftist activities is somehow biased against Trump just is absurd to me. And we even went okay, so we know about the Peter Strzok and the other woman, the text messages between them. But there were other sets of text messages that came out that showed that the agency had several people who were very pro-Trump. Right wing likes to focus on those specific text messages, and because there's a cheating scandal, they were having an affair. It's salacious and it sticks.